Welcome and thank you for joining me on this workshop. I'm so excited to be sharing this information because it's been a practice for me in the last 10 years, a personal practice within myself, and also observing a lot of the different changes that have been coming up in my work as a therapist and yoga teacher, and in my personal life, and of course in the bigger, wider collective picture of how things have been shifting. So this is going to be a workshop where I'm going to share a lot of these different observations and a lot of different holistic tips and how you can work with this energy and adapt to the Aquarian age. I also have so much more on our website at yogafореmpaths.com, and if you become a member, you're also able to check out some of the workshops that we have, including an energy cord cutting workshop that is now live on the website, which is a 3-part series, learning to release your energy cords, which I found it to be a very powerful practice in itself. So let's begin this beautiful workshop. And as a reminder, I always say to my listeners that take what feels right for you, listen to your intuition. I always try and share information from a neutral point of view, from observations, without pushing any political or spiritual ideas. So see what feels right for you, leave out what doesn't. And of course, I always recommend looking for more information. If anything inspires you, please do feel free to check out more sources and research it for yourself. And I also welcome you to come feeling very relaxed, having a journal with you, having your favorite cup of tea so that you're able to just sit back, close your eyes, and tune in. For this workshop, I am going to be dividing it into different sections, connecting to holistic health. So most of the time when we talk about holistic health, we always connect back to the idea of mind, body, soul, or mind, body, spirit. And I thought this would be amazing to do as a holistic approach to the Aquarian age. Starting from the mind, we'll explore some aspects of the mind and some themes that will come up for the Aquarian age, and then we'll move into the body, talk more about the body, how we can take care of the body and how it relates to this times. And then we'll move into the soul, and then finally to the bigger picture, the things that we can actually see happening around us and some of the patterns that we can observe and how we can adapt to it. And it's worth mentioning that because we're talking about holistic health, you have to remember that it's about the whole self. So if I am talking about one section, you will find that a lot of the things that I talk about in that section will apply to another part. So if I'm talking about the mind, then a lot of those different tips or holistic thoughts will also be very much a part of the body or the soul aspect, because when we work with one aspect of our holistic health, it affects everything. You know, it's a holistic approach. It's a beautiful way of looking at things as a whole. So let's begin. What a year 2020 has been. Just take a moment to reflect on what 2020 was for you. Was it challenging? Was it enlightening? Did it inspire you? Did it drain your energy? What was 2020 for you? I know each and every one of us has been through some journey in 2020. And it's also revealed a lot about ourselves. And I think it's also been a big catalyst in the way that we are starting to see the world around us, and we're also starting to see our role and who we are in the world. And in this part of the workshop, I'm going to go back to basics and start talking about the age of Aquarius, what it is, where we've come from, which age we've come from. I'm going to share some of the dates, and I'm also going to share some of the qualities that we can connect with and some of the qualities that will be changing over time. So let's begin with what Aquarian energy is. So when you talk about energy and astrology, we always think of astrology as an interpretation of nature's cycles. So it's an interpretation of nature's cycles, and everyone will have their own interpretation. So I'm going to go in with a very general point of view, and you can see for yourself what applies to you, what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And also I'm going to share some of the positive and the shadow aspects. And with Aquarian energy, it's an air element. We can start by saying that it's air. And we've seen how recently air is a big topic because of the virus, because of everything that's been going on. And we've seen how difficult it is to actually contain air. I mean, you can't really contain air. It does its own thing. It's expansive. It's a challenge to separate ourselves from air because it's very much a part of who we are, and we need air to survive. And it's also very different energy from the age that we've come from, which is a Piscean, and also the earth energies, which is much more denser. So air is much more lighter in frequency. It's expansive. It's also the energy of visionaries. So people who are looking forward. If someone has a very Aquarian energy, they look forward. They look at things more progressively. They question the traditional things that we've all been doing because of our culture, our society, our religion, etc., etc. The things that traditionally were passed down to us, the Aquarian energy likes to question them. And also it likes to make changes if it no longer applies to the time and place that we're in. So it is very visionary, and this can be very challenging because, of course, what we're used to and the things that we were taught and the way that the structuring in our societies have been often don't like that. It doesn't like that change. It doesn't like the energy of change. It doesn't like to release some of the things that maybe have benefited some people in society. And it's a very progressive energy. It wants that change. So we're already seeing how these two parts of our lives are changing. You know, the traditional side, the things that have always been, the structures in our world, and how we're trying to progressively move forward and work in a much more visionary level. Aquarian energy is also very intelligent, very independent, very unique, can be idealistic, and it can sometimes be very detached. So there's a lot of shadow things about the Aquarian age, and there's also a lot of positive things about the Aquarian age, depending on how this energy is used. And you have to remember, because it's an air energy and we've just come from earth energy, things are going to start picking up. I mean, even in this day and age, you can feel how much faster things are. Just even from 10 years ago, you can think about how those changes have happened. And Aquarian energy is a lot to do with technology. So compared to the time before social media, I'd say maybe 15 to 12 years ago, something like that, before we were all hooked on social media and technology and the connection of groups, things were very different back then. And now we're seeing how this collective impact using technology is changing everything. And I will go more into detail when we talk about the global level and how things are changing on a global collective level, because technology does play a huge part in Aquarius energy. And when we talk about the age of Aquarius, we have to talk about where we've come from or where we're transitioning from. So we're transitioning for the Piscean age, and each age is roughly around 2,000 years, give or take a few centuries. So roughly around 2,000 years. The Piscean age, well, I have some dates for you. From 2000 BC to 0 AD, we were in the age of Aries. And then from 0 AD to now, we were in the age of Pisces. And at some point we started getting into the age of Aquarius. And this is very This is very challenging because there's so many different sources about when the actual age of Aquarius has started, or even if it has started, if we're still in the Piscean age. But what's safe to say is that we're definitely at this point of transition. We're definitely at this point from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age. And looking at the sources and the dates, in Kundalini Yoga, it's said that the Aquarian age has started on November 11th, 2011. So 11/11/11. And then some sources said that it's actually started in December 12th of 2012. So again, 12/12/12. So that's one source of information about which date the actual age of Aquarius started. And now, in this year, 2020, we're having this amazing conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter, one of the two most important planets, at 0 degrees Aquarius. So we're almost hitting the reset button when it comes to Aquarius. And this is happening on the 21st of December of this year, 2020. And a lot of astrologers are saying that this is actually the dawning and the start of the Aquarian age. So that's another source of information about when the Aquarian age started. So have a look at your own sources of information, and I'm sure you'll find much more related to these dates. But as I said, generally we are in the middle of Piscean and Aquarian age, and because 2000 years is a long time, we're just at the beginning of this Aquarian age, and we're going to be seeing some of the most drastic and biggest shifts in the next at least the next 200 years, and we're right at the beginning of it. So it's going to be a journey. It's definitely going to be a journey. So what is the Piscean age, and how is that different from the Aquarian age? Well, the Piscean age was about structures, was about hierarchies, and also the control using these different hierarchies. So think about societies that we live in, the different class systems, the different structures that are in place, and the different controls in place depending on where we stand in the hierarchy system. It's a very vertical system, so whether you're at the bottom or whether you're at the top, each level had its own sense of control from the levels above. So you can see how this is something that, has been going on for a very long time. We can even learn about this in our history class at school, how there is a triangle effect where everything seems to be very vertical, and the masses are at the bottom, and the more you go up the triangle, there tends to be less people at the top. So that's a very Piscean energy in terms of the age. And the changes that are going to happen are going to be quite radical, because there's going to be a resistance to this. And you can see how people generally are, especially when you go up this scale, are trying to keep the structures in place. They're trying to keep that old way of doing things in place, because Aquarian energy works on a horizontal level. It's not a vertical going up the ladder level. It's a horizontal level where the focus is on networking, on equality, and an open world, on connecting to your different networks, connecting to different groups, learning from each other, being more, some would say, more global in the way that we do things. So these two sides of the spectrum are very interesting to see, and also how they apply to our life today. You can see how there is a divide in the way the structures in our society are either holding on to something or changing, or being asked or forced to change. The Piscean age is also very hidden. It doesn't like to share too much information, whereas the Aquarian energy is the age of information. It is the age where, with technology, again Aquarian energy, everything is literally at our fingertips. Actually, we're almost to a point where we have information overload. There's so much information from so many different sources and different points of view. It's all about finding our own truth in it. So it's no longer about hiding information. It's about asking for true transparency in everything that's happening, and asking those who actually control and work in our societies and our different structures to be more open and to stop hiding information from us. The Piscean age was also about possessions and materialism. So it was about not just being in the class system or the hierarchy system, but also it was about how you look. It was about what you owned, and that being a status of who you are. Whereas the Aquarian age looks at things from a much more inner point of view. It's about looking within and seeing that beauty within, and the qualities and the skills and the services that you have to offer the world. So it's shifting from the external to the internal and valuing that more. It's also, I think, a time where we're going to start seeing the things and the leaders changing. So the type of leaders that we're following and the way, quote unquote, a leader is defined in society. This is going to be very different from the Piscean age, because as a collective, they're going to be natural leaders. And if on an idealistic level, if we are working within groups, people are going to start showing up. And we're starting to see people, and maybe in the past would have never had a voice, starting to have a voice thanks to technology, thanks to the collective mindset, and also the way people are getting together, whether it's online or in person. We're starting to see those shifts. So it is a very exciting time. It's a time that's going to trigger us. It's a time where we're going to be working through our own shadow self and thinking about what we believe in, really assessing our belief system. It's also going to ask us what our role is in society and what we feel is success and what we feel we stand for and where we feel we fit into this society. And when I say society, I don't just mean our local society, but our global society. We all have a role to play, and in the past, maybe we did fit into certain roles that no longer exist. A lot of the roles that we had in the Piscean age might be completely different or might not even be served now. You're seeing this in so many different parts of life where the things that mattered no longer matter, or the focus of what needs to happen is different. So many different transitions and transformations, and I think 2020 was definitely an intense crash course on observing what's going on within and seeing what's going on around us. And what I'll do is I'm going to get in much deeper to some of the personal things like our mind, body and soul, some of the things that we can work on, and also more about the global shifts that are happening. And with that being said, we're going to start off with the mind. And I invite you, as always, with every workshop, with every class, to have a journal nearby, to have your favorite cup of tea, have your blanket, make yourself really comfortable. You can close your eyes if you want to and just listen to what comes up, see what feels right for you. And if you want to take down any notes or write down anything when I'm asking reflection questions in your journal, feel free to do that. Of course, you're able to pause this audio at any time if you want more space or more time to think about certain things that I'm going to be talking through. So the mind. When I talk about holistic health and mind, body, soul, or mind, body, spirit, it's funny how the mind comes first. And I often wonder why it came first. And then the more I thought about it, the more obvious it was, because we're living in a time where we connect mainly with our mind. If we have to choose the three parts of holistic health that we normally work with, the mind aspect seems to be the most logical way of beginning. And even if you think about 10 years or even 15 years ago, how we use our mind now compared to back then, we can see that there has been a big shift. Maybe we didn't realize it, but there has been a big shift in the way we use our mind. We're definitely more in our headspace than ever before. I'm thinking back to the clients that I met back in the day when I first began doing my therapy work, and it didn't seem as extreme as it is now. Every time I'm seeing clients now, 9 out of 10 times, they're working more with their headspace versus the present moment. So it's all about the headspace and being in the upper chakras versus being grounded in the physical world and being in the spaces that we currently are. And why is this? For many reasons, but if we're talking about the Aquarian age, we can think about the element of Aquarius, which is air. Air is very much connected to the mind, and it's a very expansive energy. If you think about 2020 and all the themes that came up with air and what was in the air, and all the challenges that came up with trying to contain this thing in the air, I mean, that's just a very drastic, classic example of how you can't really control air. It's there, it's present, and it's not something that's easy to contain in any way. And Aquarius, being a very mental mind and a very mental energy, it wants to continue expanding. It doesn't want to be contained. It wants to find new insights. It wants to be inspired. It wants to be mentally stimulated. And the age of Aquarius, and Aquarius itself, is about information. So it's about the informative energy. It's about the things that inspire us to think more and to connect the dots and to bring all these theories together. So it's a very, very dynamic energy. Aquarius has always been a very dynamic energy. And when you mix in the mind aspect, we're definitely at an age where we're going to be working more with our headspace. And you can see it. You can see it all around us. Now that we have phones and technology, which is another very Aquarian thing, you can see how in daily life it's everywhere. Even when people are waiting for a bus or walking down the street, the phone is there. Their headspace is somewhere else. It's just amazing to see how just 10 years into this transition into the age of Aquarius, and we're still very much in a space where we have many years to come, where we really properly head into the Aquarius age. And we've already started connecting so much with our mind versus the present moment. So there are positive things, of course. You know, there are positive and challenging things to everything. The age of information. Age of information puts us in a place where we can have choices. We can decide for ourselves which information we want to tune into or what we want to tune into. We have more options. We literally have more things at our fingertips than ever before. Whether it's information about what's going on in the world, information about anything really on a personal level, on a collective level, we can just tap in a few things on Google and there it is. And this brings us to a place where, with the information age, we are going to be shifting in the way we choose things. We're going to be deciding more as a collective how we move forward based on the information that we're looking at and also the information that we're given. And we're starting to question everything much more because there is so much information out there. So it can be very exciting and very dynamic in that way. But I'd like to focus for a moment about the challenging aspects first, because you can start to see how, in terms of holistic health and taking care of ourselves, we have to dive into the challenging aspects. We all know the positive aspects of having information and being in a very technology-based environment a collective environment in the world. We know the positive sides, but we have to start to be more aware of the challenging sides of it, and also how we can personally deal with it and take responsibility for ourselves in these coming times, as it becomes more obvious that technology is going to be part of our life, and we're going to have more information and be more in the headspace. So let's dive into the shadow. Let's dive into the shadow of the age of Aquarius and the mind. And I'm seeing this a lot with my clients. Again, compared to 10 years ago, or when I began my journey as a therapist, compared to now, I'm seeing so much more of this. And I'm observing this in my own life as well as the people in my personal life. And the big thing that keeps coming up is that we're overstimulated. We're overstimulated and overworked. Things are faster. The pace has become much more faster. Aquarius energy is related to Uranus, the planet Uranus, which is a lot to do with electricity. So everything feels more electric and it's moving faster, and we're having to adapt to a much more faster pace of life. And if we're always in our headspace, we're going to be overstimulated and overworked. And if we're mainly in our upper chakras, because that's where our headspace is, and not in our lower chakras or in the present moment or in our body, or just really present with this moment now, then it does have a very, very big shadow effect, especially when it comes to the nervous system. The nervous system and issues to do with mental health. And if you've been observing, especially related to news about the healthcare systems, mental health has been in the spotlight in the last couple of years, and it's good. It's actually very good that now people are starting to look at mental health and take it more seriously compared to maybe 10 years ago. Mental health wasn't spoken about so much. And also practices related to mental health are going to be something that is going to radically change, I think, in the next coming years, because we're going to see in the shadow aspect of the mind and the Aquarian age that mental health is going to be a big issue. People are overstimulated, overworked, and there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of different things that will challenge us and trigger our minds. And one of these things specifically is the what we call cold depression and burnout. So cold depression and burnout is definitely a sign of the times. And again, maybe you can think about times in your own life where you've been through it, or you've observed someone else going through it. And the strange thing about this is that most times in the collective society that we live in, most of the times we don't even know we are heading towards this path, because there's so much glorification of being busy, so much glorification of the doing aspect, the masculine doing action-based aspects of life, less on the feminine, more on the masculine. So everyone is doing, everyone is putting out their energy. The demands in our external environment seem to be much more than ever before, whether it's our work or our personal life, our family life. There's just so much more focus. There's so much more focus on us putting out more energy. Add to that social media, being more present online, marketing ourselves. If you're in a career where you have to market or brand yourself, whether it's your business or whether you're working for someone else, social media has been a part of putting our energy out there as well. And if you think about it, so many people are tuned into social media, and every minute there seems to be this energy being put out there by everybody. So this energy of giving and putting out there is a very masculine energy. And we don't realize how it can affect us if we're not taking care or recharging our own energy. So we have to recharge our own energy in order to give fully. So let me share a definition of cold depression. Cold depression is when the external demand is greater than the internal capacity to deliver, and we have spent our resources. So it is when the external demand is greater, so we have a lot of pressure from the external world we're living, and it's greater than the internal capacity to deliver. So we have to give so much more than what we have within ourselves, and we have spent our resources. So we have nothing left to give, but we do it anyway. And this leads to burnout. And I've seen this in a lot of people. I've been through this myself as well, where there is severe burnout when you're giving constantly and you're not recharging your own energy. And this is really a wake-up call. I think we're living at a time right now where there has to be a wake-up call on an individual level and a collective level to take care of our own energy systems in order to be able to perform at the pace that we have to in order to function in the Aquarian age. I've been observing how a lot of companies, for example, are starting to have their own therapists and starting to have days where like team group meetings and team group activities where people are taking time out to take care of their stress, which is great as well. I'm seeing more of that in the workplace. But on an individual level, I think we have to also take responsibility for taking care of our own energy and making sure that we are more observant about our energy capacities and how we're exchanging energy in the world. Aquarian energy is about the electrical energy exchanges. So we have to make sure that we're also balanced within ourselves, what we're giving, what we're receiving, and how we are recharging ourselves. So I want to share some holistic tips. Holistic tips, some of them will apply to other areas of this workshop as well, so not just the mind aspect. The first one is to really take care of yourself and your nervous system. So self-care for your nervous system, self-care in general. And I'm not just talking about self-care as in taking yourself away from your daily routines so that you can take care of yourself. That can be amazing too. For example, going for an hour to a yoga studio or a gym away from your daily routines. Of course, that's amazing. But in terms of your daily regular habits, it's also, I think, very important to have some tools in place where you can do small things during the day to recharge your own energy. For example, self-care can be about waking up 15 minutes earlier than normal so that you have that space to just breathe, have a cup of tea, be alone, and just concentrate on yourself and set some intentions for the day. Self-care during your normal day can be while you're walking from point A to point B, just focusing on your breath as you're walking, knowing that you have to be somewhere, but just taking that moment to focus on your breath and to be present with whatever is around you as you're walking. Self-care can be switching off your computer 30 minutes before you sleep so that you're able to take those last 30 minutes to connect with your body, do a little bit of stretching, or to connect with the people nearest you and being present with those that you love. Self-care can just be having that coffee break and really enjoying the smells and the senses and everything that's going on with your cup of coffee, as well as doing a few notes in your journal. You see, the theme of self-care is simple. It is very simple, but it's also about creating habits. It's about creating habits within our daily routines that we can actually do over the long term. It's not a short-term thing. It's little habits that help us keep our energy up and keep ourselves observant of how we are functioning and how we're exchanging energy. This moves on nicely to a practice that I love to do, and I did a whole video on this, so please check out the link if you want to know more information about this. And this practice is about the 3 functional minds. We talk about the 3 minds. We have the positive mind, the negative mind, and the neutral mind. And during the normal day, in real life, we sway from one end to the other. We might find ourselves more positive on one day or going through more of a negative mind. But if we start to observe which mind we're coming from, we can start to be more in the neutral mind, and we can start making more conscious choices about the things that are happening in our daily life, especially stressful situations, whether it's at work or at home. We all have different stress things going on sometimes, especially this year and the years to come. There will be different stress factors coming in, but if we're more in the neutral mind, we're able to weigh things out. We're able to weigh out the negative and the positive mind. And please check out that video because it will go into more details about what the 3 functional minds are. But making this a practice is one of the most amazing things that I found has helped me and many clients go through their daily routines and really start to be more present with themselves. It is definitely something that we can grow over time. But just even today, if I ask you a simple question, do you feel you've been more positive, more negative, or more neutral? Just taking a few moments to check in with yourself can make a huge difference. So that's one holistic practice I definitely recommend, working with the 3 functional minds. Moving on to the next holistic tip, I'd like to focus on creativity. And creativity comes in many ways. When we think of creativity, sometimes we start to focus on the traditional viewpoints of creativity, like art or music. It doesn't have to be that. Creative energy is anything that you feel you can channel your energy towards, which also gives back in some way or another. It's the act of giving, but also what you receive really recharges your own energy. It reminds me of when you find or when you observe children and how they're playing and they're spending so much energy playing, but at the same time you can see their energy is just growing and growing. Even though they're spending so much of their energy, it's because they're being creative. They're giving and they're receiving from the things that they love to do. So I'd like to ask you, what creative outlets or what things or activities do you like to do in order to just release your energy, in order to tap into your joy and your fulfillment? It could be something that you're doing these days. It could be something that you used to do when you were younger. I know a lot of people return back to their younger years when they think about creativity, and they bring back those activities in later age. So think about when you were a teenager or even younger. What did you love to do? What enjoyment or pleasures did you used to get from some activities? Creativity is such a beautiful and personal thing. And creativity done in a healthy way is essential for finding that balance between being in the mind and the headspace versus being in the present moment and in the physical earth. Which leads to the last point I want to make, which is a little bit related to the shadow side of the Aquarian age, which is that there will be many different forms of escapism and distractions that can easily be disguised as creativity. And it can easily be a healthy thing when it's done in small doses, but then when it's done in huge doses can become an addiction, a form of escapism, an unhealthy comfort, or a distraction from reality. So think of different ways in which you distract yourself. Think of different ways in which you find comfort in simple things. Think of ways, if you're really honest, that help you escape stresses or escape daily routines and bring you to another level or another place. Most of those things, I'm sure, are not unhealthy, but if they're done or consume too much, maybe they can turn into something that creates unbalance in both our mind and our whole self. So for example, we can enjoy Netflix. I enjoy Netflix. I'm sure you do too. There's so many beautiful things in Netflix. But then in this day and age with technology, we can use Netflix or video games or anything related to technology to escape if we're doing it and it's actually distracting us from doing the real or channeling the real energy in our daily lives. Other habits that can become very common is the consumption of alcohol or drugs. I've seen that many times with clients who just want to have a little bit of a rest from daily life or their stresses. And sometimes it can even become a functional habit. So you heard of a functional alcoholic, somebody who on the extreme end drinks but is able to function. And these unhealthy habits can again creep in along with the burnout, along with not knowing that you're going through a cold depression. And ultimately, when we talk about these things, we also have to keep in mind that the effect of it is almost like a numbing process. That's why we call it cold depression. It's the numbing effect that it has on us when we are overstimulated, when we are going too fast with energy within our body, within our mind, within our energy system. When everything's too fast, there's this huge temptation to numb it out through the different escapisms, the comfort, eating, the addictions, the unhealthy ways of using technology. So this is one important thing that I do want to stress when it comes to self-care. Being very mindful that when you are choosing things as a form of self-care, making sure that it's not a form of escapism, distraction, or an unhealthy form of comfort and numbing. And what we'll do now is we'll jump as a continuation of this into the body, because the mind is just one part of ourselves, one huge area that we can explore. There's so many different things I can say about the mind, but I also want to bring that down into the body. So we're going to explore how we can bring that energy downwards into the body and fully appreciate the physical vehicle that we have in this world. Think about your body. Just for a moment, think about your relationship to your body. Even just saying this now, or asking you now, how do you feel about your body, your physical body? What does it represent to you? How do you feel within your body? Do you take the time every day to connect with your body, whether it's through self-care or just being connected to the physical feeling and the senses that our body gives? Our body is such an amazing tool. I mean, it's a vehicle to our soul. It works without us even consciously being aware of it sometimes. Like, we aren't always conscious about our breath. We aren't always conscious about our heartbeat and all the other different systems in our physical, biological body. It's such an amazing tool. Yet, as we move into the age of Aquarius, there's going to be more of a need to connect with the body, to bring that energy down from the mind space into the body to find that balance. So bringing the upper chakras down into the heart, into the solar plexus, feeling the fears and uncomfort and the courage, and feeling the willpower through our third chakra, going down into our second chakra, feeling desires, emotions, energy cords that we're collecting throughout our life, and then back down into the root chakra, which is about the physical survival. So we're really taking that 5D energy from our upper chakras, which is the higher realms, into the lower chakras, which is the 3D reality, the everyday things that we have to deal with. Some of them are stressful, some of them are joyous, but they are all part of who we are, and there's this integration process of our energy. And as we move into the Aquarian age, because the energy starts to lighten up and become much more faster, we have to bring it down. We constantly have to really find ways to do some grounding work. And as I mentioned before, air does not like to be contained, so sometimes the physical body and the physical things around us feel heavy. They feel, because they are denser in frequency, they feel heavier and they take more time. Our body takes much more time. It needs more time to process a lot of the energies that are going on, which is why connecting to the mind, we have so many different issues that might come up if we're too much in our mind space, or we're connecting to our mind in an unhealthy way. So let's appreciate our body more. Whatever you feel about your body, it's still a vehicle for your soul. It helps you navigate. It helps us get through things. It helps us manifest into the physical world. And grounding is one of the best and the most foundational, back to basics, holistic approaches to finding balance in this day and age. When I'm working with my clients, I always see them working with the upper chakras, and I always ask them if they actually feel their lower chakras, if they actually connect with their body in the present moment. And 9 out of 10 times they say they forget to connect with their breath. They forget to feel their body. They forget to feel their movements. They forget to work with their body. And this is a common part of today's society and today's living. So I want to share some things that we can do to get grounded, starting from movement. Conscious movement. What do I mean by that? I mean, as we go through our daily routines, maybe taking some time to consciously feel ourselves walking. Feel the pressure and the gravity of our body as we're walking through the soles of our feet. Maybe taking a moment or 15 minutes to half an hour to put on some music and to dance, to feel our body, to sweat it out, to do things where we feel our heart beating. Connecting to the rhythms of our body through movement. You can do this through walking. You can do this through endless amount of ways, and I definitely recommend it to be at least something that you do consciously once a week, at least. Where you go to nature, or you take a long walk, or you dance, or you go to the gym, or you do some yoga. Anything that will get the energy physically distributed around your body, and where you can feel your body in its full form and working. And this helps to channel emotions. So it takes the energy from the upper chakras and the lower chakras through emotions, which is energy emotion, and it allows for that deep release, especially if you feel like you're holding a lot of energy inside. And I know with the disconnection of our body and our lower chakras, we can tend to feel a lot of emotions stuck in our bodies. Movement, using movement to release, is amazing. As extension to this, connecting with our senses, the physical senses that we have, is a way of making movement a practice. So if I ask you now, which of your senses, apart from your sixth sense and apart from your sight, which we often use, which of the senses do you enjoy connecting with? So take a moment just to breathe in deeply and think about which of the senses you enjoy connecting with the most, apart from sight and apart from your sixth sense. And then I'd like to ask you, how can you bring that as a self-care practice? How can you explore it? How can you bring creativity into enjoying those senses that you're thinking about? A simple example, if you like music, maybe it's time to explore new music, or to be around people who are musicians, or to listen to new things. to connect with music deeper. Or if you like the sense of smell, maybe it's time to create sense of smell around your home through essential oils, through just putting a few drops of essential oils in your shower or bath when you get up in the morning, before you go to work. Simple little things to engage your senses that will automatically bring the energy from your upper chakras and your mind back into your body, and back into the feeling, and back into the connecting of this beautiful soul vehicle that you have. So think about ways that you can enjoy your senses. Take a moment to write them down in your journal if you want to. I gave some simple examples, but there are just so many other ways that you can connect with your senses. And of course, one of the best ways that I find grounding to be an easy thing to do in daily life is through journaling. If you can get your journal, have your journal nearby, and take a moment to write in your journal quite often, there's actually a science process that shows that there's a lot of activity from the mind, the memory, and all the functions of the mind going down into the body when we're releasing through paper and pen. So not through technology, but good old-fashioned paper and pen. And making this a daily practice, even if it's as simple as writing down what you feel grateful for. And I have a page on my website where it does outline some practices for journal writing, and you're very welcome to have a look there. But journaling is such a beautiful way of grounding your energy, and of course releasing things that you want to get out of your system, so the thoughts and the emotions. And actually, when you make it a general practice and a regular practice, you can start analyzing and seeing from an outside point of view what's going on within. So that's one of my favorite forms of grounding, and one of the easiest forms of grounding, because you don't need much apart from a little bit of time and a paper and pen to do this. The next tip I want to share is about feeding our body. So feeding our body positive energy and also prana, life force energy. So thinking of ways in which we can feed our physical body with good energy. And the obvious one is through food. So think about the type of food that you eat. And I generally like to say that if you want to be connected more with energy in your environment, start to eat foods that are seasonal to your direct environment. So your local environment. What grows around you? Where can you find and support businesses that share the seasonal foods that your environment offers? Even if you're in the middle of the big city, there's always little spaces where people are selling local foods. And by eating local foods and eating within the season that you're in, you're actually tuning into nature on so many levels. And that includes your body. Your body is it's starting to tap in to the season, to the location that you are, just through food. So if you want to ground your body and feed it positive energy, try and find seasonal, fresh food that you can connect with and you can consume. And of course, there's other ways that you can feed your body positive energy. Sunshine, getting a good dose of sunshine. If you live in a place which doesn't have much sunshine, like myself in London, it can be a struggle. But when the days are there and there is sunshine, even just going out and allowing yourself to feel the sunshine is just a beautiful way of finding balance within yourself. It has an effect in our body. It has an effect in our sleep and our hormones and so many other functions in our body. So getting a healthy dose of sunshine is beautiful. And also air, fresh air, or doing practices with air. Remember, Aquarius is an air sign. So if you can find practices using air, or using your breath, should I say, where you can start to really connect with your breath on a deeper level. And this can be as simple as, connecting with your breath as you're going about your daily routines, or a conscious practice where you actually try different techniques. And I highly recommend trying breath of fire in the morning. So breath of fire, 3 minutes in the morning is fantastic. Or you can do right nostril breathing, where you just breathe in and out through your right nostril for 3 minutes in the morning. That empowers you, that brings that solar fire energy into your system and wakes you up for the day. Or at nighttime, if you want to do the opposite and you want to calm your body, breathe through the left nostril, and that connects you to the lunar energy. It calms your system down and it connects to your breath, the air element, and your body. So try out different breathing exercises and meditations, and I promise you it has such a beautiful, deep impact in our body. And the last one I want to talk about is looking at positive energy in your environment. So just getting down to the basics of connecting with things that make you feel good, or being very conscious of the things that don't make you feel good. And asking yourself that constantly. How is my energy level right now? Have I connected or had an energy exchange with a person or place or situation that affected my energy in any way? And just keeping that in mind as you go through your daily life, and consciously choosing to be around people who inspire you or places that inspire you, and adding more of those physical elements in so that you can have those positive energy exchanges in the physical world, which also has a benefit of grounding, and it also has a benefit of taking us out of our comfort zone, because when we start incorporating new things that make us feel good, we're able to get out of our comfort zone, we're able to be creative and be more present in the physical form with our body, with our mind, and all the other different systems in our energy. So that's a wonderful practice to do. After talking about the mind and the body, we have to bring it into the soul. We have to bring it into a soulful level, which is what we're going to talk about now. How we can integrate everything that we're going through, transforming, and how we can bring it into the soul. And I'm a big believer that our soul has a contract. It chose to be here. It chose to have all the different parts that make up our soul, from the karma and the dharma to our ancestral ties in the past. And in yoga, we always talk about 7 generations before, affecting who we are today, and also the impact we have on 7 generations ahead of us. So think about how powerful that is, even on an ancestral physical level. The cycles, the habits, the social norms, the things that were passed on through our family 7 generations, at least 7 generations or more before us, shaped who we are today. And we have that power right now, if we choose to pass on that energy, is to break some of those old habits that no longer serve, and to keep those that we want to nurture and continue. And if we talk about past lives, we can talk about karma and dharma. We are a cycle of karma that came into this world, and we can have the choices and the ability and the responsibility to choose what we want to continue. And even in our daily life, through our daily habits, that in itself is karma, because we're creating cycles. We're creating cycles through habits, the things that we do every day, the things that we choose to express our soul in every single moment. So think about even the smallest things that you do at the beginning of the day, like brushing your teeth and washing yourself and getting ready, and the small habits that you do throughout the week. These are all a collection of karma. Our daily habits are karma. The ancestral ties that we have is karma. And the lifetimes that we've lived through is karma. And now in this lifetime, we have the opportunity to create dharma. Dharma meaning really fulfilling our true purpose, really connecting to who we are and what we're here for. And that sounds really big. That does sound really big and huge. But I think when it comes to the Aquarian age, these big thoughts and these energies that we can't see but we can tap into are a very big source of inspiration. From our ancestors to our past lives to our daily habits that we're creating karma to the things that we do, everything is energy, and we can tap into that and make those choices. And as we get more into the Aquarian age and things become much more faster but also much more spiritual, people start to sense things a lot more. So these are very exciting times, I think. It's exciting times because we have the ability to choose. When there's transitional times like the one we're living in, it's because we're here to choose. We're here to move forward. We're here to make an impact on a personal level and a collective level. And in yoga, we talk about the sensory beings. We already spoke about how fast the energy is of Aquarius. The information, the energy, the electricity of it all. The things that we have to consume in this lifetime compared to maybe even just a few generations ago is so much more. We're processing so many different more connections through our relationships and friendships. We're processing so many more different purpose for living in through our careers and our jobs. Before, it used to be that so-and-so would pass on his trade or her trade to their son or daughter, and they would do the same trade throughout their whole life in the same place. Or that person would marry one person and they would be together for the rest of their life. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist now, but in the world that we live in, we're actually burning through so many different cycles of karma through different relationships, through different career choices. It no longer applies now that we have to be within the same career path throughout our whole life. In fact, it was said that in our lifetime and in the next generations, we might have to go through 3 different career paths. And the same with relationships. You know, some people are meant to be lifetime partners, and some people burn through different karmas that they have to experience in this lifetime. So much more karma is being burnt off in order to connect with our Dharma, in order to burn through all the things that no longer serve us on a personal level and a collective level, so that we can really connect with our true purpose. And when we talk about sensory beings in all of this, we are actually all becoming more sensitive. In the last 5 years, the word empath and highly sensitive person has become a very big topic when you're talking about energy. And in a way, I'm so happy about this because there's more awareness that we are becoming more sensitive. And it's because we have to. Think about all the things we're processing in one day. The things we process in one lifetime, even just one day, is so much more than somebody in the last generation or the last 2 generations or even 10 years ago. So in order to adapt, we have to be open to being sensitive. And again, this is a challenge because in the Aquarian age being a very masculine energy, it does have that side of sensitivity. But sometimes we have to remind ourselves to hold space for tuning in to the sensitive parts of our soul. Being a sensory being is the way that we're going to adapt in the Aquarian age in order to process, collect, and realize what this information and our experiences are here for on our soul's journey. Also, when we talk about the sensory beings, we're also thinking about Kundalini. As a Kundalini yoga teacher, this is such an exciting time because more and more people are starting to awaken their Kundalini. And the Kundalini sits at the base of our spine and rises all the way up. And I did a whole article on this, and it's a beautiful process to see how each person connects with Kundalini differently. But one thing's for sure, once it's awakened, we start to see the shifts in our own life. We start to burn through even more karma. We start to connect to things that maybe in the past we didn't. So, to take a moment, I'd like to ask you, as a reflection question, whether you've had a Kundalini yoga or a Kundalini awakening experience, and also how much karma do you feel like you've burnt off or faced in this lifetime? And they usually come in the form of triggers and challenges, especially when it comes to family. And I know sometimes when we're connecting with the spiritual side of things, a lot of people who listen to this sort of workshops and this sort of content tend to be black sheep of their own family. They tend to be the outsiders of their own family. So where do you fit in all this? How does it affect you, or what is inspiring you when I'm talking about the soul journey? Take a moment to write this down. And if you want to, you can pause and get very clear about what your karma is, or what things you're facing in this lifetime, and also what you would like to change in order to make that impact. Maybe the things that you were taught through your culture, through your society, through your environment, through your family, don't serve you. And that's okay, because in the age of Aquarius, we're going to be moving past a lot of the traditional stuff, a lot of the shadow traditional stuff, because not all traditional stuff is bad, definitely not. But the ones, or the energy of the traditional self that is heavy and that is damaging or harmful to our soul, that's going to be moved away. That's going to be shown to us. That's going to be inviting us to clear that karma. And we have to be sensory beings in order to do that. We have to be more observant in order to observe the things and the opportunities that the universe is giving to us. One of the tools that is super important during the times of these Aquarian times is intuition. Working with our intuition. And we're living in times where people don't even know what their intuition is telling them, because there's so much going on. You see how everything is connected together. When I'm talking about the mind, when I'm talking about the body, there's a theme running through this, and that there's just so much energy that we have to process, and so much energy ties, and so many things in our air that we don't see, the frequencies in our air, that we're shifting through and sieving through and figuring out. And our intuition is the guiding force in order to go through all of these different ties and all of these different layers and frequencies. We need to have a very strong intuitive force. So as a holistic step, this is something I absolutely think is a must for the age of Aquarius, connecting to your intuition, connecting to your third eye. And there are very simple ways that you can do this, because it's a process, especially if you haven't connected to your intuition in a very long time. So take a moment as a reflection again, for me to ask you these questions and just to see what comes up. Firstly, I'd like to ask you, when was the last time you tuned into your intuition? When was the last time you tuned into your intuition and did exactly what it said to you? Write this down if you want to, or make a mental note. And then think about one time in the past where you didn't listen to your intuition, even though you knew your intuition was pointing you in a certain direction, and you chose to ignore it. And what happened? Again, take a mental note, write this down in your journal if you want to. And the last question I'd like to ask you is, in your intuitive self, what does intuition mean to you? How do you know it's intuition? Do you feel it in any part of your body? I know a lot of people feel it in their belly, the second brain. Some people feel it as something in their heart space. That's another powerful one. Or some people get a very strong reaction with their whole body when something doesn't feel right. When you just want to close up your energy. You feel yourself contracting inwards because something just doesn't feel right. So on an individual and personal level, how do you feel about intuition? How do you know it's intuition? And again, write this down, make a mental note. And if you don't know what intuition means to you, that's okay as well. Because sadly, in a very long time, we haven't been honoring our intuition. Society does not honor intuitive explanations or reasonings. It tends to be more logical. It tends to be more through reasons and physical results. And that again is the masculine. And again, there's nothing wrong with that side. But there seems to be an overemphasis on the masculine. And we need to bring it back into the feminine, which is about being open and trusting and allowing and letting our intuition speak and playing with our intuition. So on a regular basis, playing with our intuition so that it becomes more natural to us, especially if we spend a long time just burying our intuition, which many people do in order to be more logical and functional in the physical world. As a general guide, I would say that in order to tell the difference between whether it's your mind or your monkey mind chatter talking or whether it's your true intuition, I always find that intuition tends to be very clear, as in it says it once. It's a very strong voice. It might be a very quiet voice if you haven't been listening to it for a while, but it's there, and it doesn't say things over and over again. Whereas if we're working from the place of the mind and the mind chatter and the powered brain, sometimes the thoughts can start to feel like cycles. We hear the same thoughts over and over and over again, and it starts to question itself, and it starts to take on a whole conversation in itself. And then it's not the intuition, because intuition tends to be on a lower level. It doesn't tend to be in your head space. It will be at least through the heart or another part of your body. And this is something for you on an individual level, on a personal level, to discover. One way you can do that is first thing in the morning, as an intention, say to yourself that today I'm just going to follow my intuition. Today I'm going to follow my intuition from the most basic things that I'm going to do today. For example, if I'm going to get my early morning cup of something, I ask my intuition, does my body feel like tea or coffee? And see what comes up. And then throughout the day, if I'm going to do something, or if I'm walking down the street and I have some free time, I'll ask my intuition, should I go this way or that way? And again, see what comes up. And continuously asking your intuition to be present. So you're holding space for your intuition. You're saying to your intuition, hey, it's safe. It's safe to come up and speak to me. I'm listening. I'm here. I would love to hear what you have to say. So that's a very simple practice, a very holistic approach to start getting familiar with your intuition. Have conversations with it. See what comes up. Allow your thoughts and your body to speak, and soon you'll start to see whether it's your monkey mind chatter speaking or whether it's your intuitive self. And as a practice, if you continue doing this, you'll start to see whether your intuition was really pointing you in the right direction or not. Maybe you'll end up bumping into the right people or creating synchronicity, and then your intuition is really working for you. Synchronicity is when your energy is flowing. For example, you get out in the morning and a bus just happens to be there that you need to take. And then you get off the bus and you happen to bump into someone that you were thinking about. These are all signs of synchronicity and flow. And when you have those moments, sometimes we have a lot of those moments, sometimes we have hardly any. But when we do have those moments, then we know we're in that creative, intuitive state. So as a practice, keep talking to your intuition. Keep asking yourself, does this feel right or does that feel right? See what comes up. Hold space for it. And in time, these will lead you to bigger decisions, especially when it comes to life decisions that we've all been facing from 2020 onwards. And obviously all the different shifts that are happening in our closest environments. We're all going through this together, and our intuition will be a guiding force for us, embracing the sensory being that we are. So now that we've talked about being a sensory being, I'd also like to talk about the shadow side of self and the soul in the Aquarian times. And this will lead off to the next part that we're going to talk about, which is the more global and bigger picture. Because within our soul, if we are going through changes that are being triggered, especially through outer changes that we're seeing, it can feel very isolating. That's the shadow side of going through changes in the Aquarian age and the transitions. We can feel quite isolated. I know a lot of people who've had Kundalini awakenings and big shifts have also said to me that for a period of time, they feel like they can no longer relate to the people that they once used to connect with, whether it was their friends, even their partner. It just didn't feel right anymore because they were changing. And with change on a personal and soulful level, there are so many impacts that happen. Not just the isolation, but we start to also feel like we're attracting more of the things we don't want. And this is actually a good thing. If you are attracting more of the things you don't want, this is an opportunity to break karma. I repeat that again. If you are attracting more of the things that you don't want on your journey, on your soulful journey, then this is a real test and opportunity to see if you're going to break the karma, if you're going to step up, and if you're going to do things differently. A random example I can give is, let's say somebody is releasing a toxic relationship, and then they go out dating and they find out that they're attracting more of the same dynamics in these new people, and they're thinking, why am I still attracting the same type of guy or girl and the same type of things that I'm trying to get away from? And that's actually an opportunity. That's like the universe, or whatever you want to call it, is stepping up and seeing if you're also going to step up to make the right decisions and break that karma. And see if you're going to choose it again and go back to the old cycles, or if you're going to make new choices and choose something different. So if you are going through change, know that this is a normal and actually a very good sign. And with time, and with reconfirming over and over again that you're going to break that karma, you're going to make new choices, then the right things start to show up. And the right synchronicity starts to show up because your frequency is changing. Your frequency in the world is changing. And during the times of Aquarian age and the Aquarian energy, people pick up on energy. We're all sensory beings. We're all getting more sensitive. We're picking up more energy about each other. Things that are very subconscious, and sometimes we don't even know we're picking it up. But it's happening. It's happening, and we're going to be seeing more of that flow in the next coming years. So it's so important to be grounded in and very clear about what your needs are and what you want to attract. And also to do the actions, to get out of the comfort zone, to be creative, and to allow new things to come into your life. And in time, that isolation starts to become very empowering, because you start doing things that you normally wouldn't do alone. And normally when you do things alone, it's an invitation for new people, new experiences, new situations to come your way. So don't be afraid of isolation. I know a lot of people in the Aquarian age are going to go through this, and it's not pleasant in the beginning. But it's not about being lonely, it's about being by yourself. Big difference, being lonely versus being by yourself. Being by yourself is being your best friend and literally being by yourself, hand in hand with yourself, and connecting with your true self as you go through this new journey. And as a reflection question, I want to ask you, what are you passionate about? Before we go on to the next part, what are you passionate about? Take a moment on a mental level or to write this down to get very clear about what you're passionate about. It could be a cause, it could be something that you love to do and you love to share. It could be something that you've been inspired by. But what do you feel passionate about? Take a moment to think about it, and I'll start talking about the bigger global picture in a second. Now that we have a clear picture about what we feel passionate about, we can start to bring everything together and connect with the bigger picture and the global level, the collective. I can say that 2020 has been a very, very strange time on a personal level, but it's also been an eye-opener because we've all individually gone through a process. And it's like 2020 was actually an intense crash course in adapting to some of the things that we're going to be facing in the future and trying to find balance between two sides of the spectrum. You can see from the collective there's so many different layers. Some of it still feels very hidden. Some of it feels very unreal sometimes, or abstract, or strange. But all of these different angles and different sides of the global collective are helping us to shape how we move forward. In 2020, even with all the triggers and challenges and the health issues on a personal and collective level, I think it's made us much more clear, or it's starting to plant seeds of clarity into how we want to move forward and how we want to connect with each other. It's no longer the case that what happens in the other side of the world doesn't affect me. It's become a we. It's not about me, it's about we. Aquarius energy is about groups and people and communities getting together. And we're starting to see in 2020 how these groups are becoming very strong. And you can ask yourself, which group do I belong in? Because the Aquarian age will ask you, who are your people? Who are your soul family? Who do you feel like you can connect with in order to accomplish your soul's contract and your soul's journey and your dharma? So we're going to go through all the different layers that have come up this year in 2020 and all the different things that might come up in future. And it's important to remember that it's always about finding balance between these two sides of the spectrum. On a holistic level, what feels right for us, and also finding our personal balance when it comes to the different changes that are happening. And as I mentioned, the first thing is the global versus the local community. As things started shutting down during lockdown, and also borders being closed and travel being disrupted, we started seeing how global the world has become and how our local communities are connecting to the global self. In politics as well, you can see this playing out very clearly. I mean, I'm not going to go into the specific things, but you can see how in politics it became almost, and it still is, very much a global versus local type of energy, where some people want to protect their boundaries and borders, and some people are open to embracing the wider community. So each one of us is thinking, where do I fit into all of this? Am I more local? Am I more global? And how can I find this balance between the two? Because both sides have positives and both sides have challenges. as with everything in life, but it's become quite extreme. Have you noticed how it's become quite extreme from the global to the local? We've also seen how this has been with local businesses, where global businesses, some of them have really made a lot of money this year, versus local businesses who've had to either step up and change the way they do things, or have had to, deal with the fact that it has started to become more globalized. Think about food, for example, your local food grocery store, the place that you buy food from. Is it a global company? Is it a global corporation? Or is it a local one? Many of us during lockdown have found that we can find more comfort in going to the local and supporting local businesses versus going to the global one. So whatever it is that you found within your own experience in 2020, it's been really interesting to see this play out in our own lives, whether we choose to go local or global, versus in the bigger world around us, the people in the higher forms of the structures that we live in, whether it's the governments, the healthcare system, etc., how they work with the global versus local energy. And with this, we're finding that a lot of old structures are not working anymore. Let's face it, a lot of structures in our society are not working anymore. We're having to really be confronted by this. And this year has become extremely obvious, no matter which part of the globe you live in, that some of the structures, again, whether it's a global, the healthcare system, etc., some of these things are feeling very out of date. This is where the Aquarian energy comes in, because Aquarian energy likes new things, it likes change, it likes to shake up things, and it likes to update itself constantly. And a lot of these old structural earth energies that we've been dealing with in the last age, the Piscean age especially, it's no longer becoming relevant, because the way it's structured no longer serves its people. Maybe it never did serve its people or the collective, but we're starting to see more, and we're starting to be more clued up about the things that are going on. With information, this is something that is actually extremely dangerous for those who want to keep control over the collective. And Aquarian energy is a rebellious energy. It doesn't like to be contained. It doesn't like to have structures. So we're seeing things like censorship versus freedom, the censorship of information. Think about the information that we're getting about the virus, for example, and how it's very difficult to get any form of information that doesn't go with what is supposed to be out there. And a lot of it is to do with control. And a lot of it for some people might be because they don't want certain information out there. So everyone's going to have their point of view when they're listening to this. It's about personally figuring out whether censorship versus freedom, which side we're on, and finding a balance between the two. And because there's more of a rise of freedom, a freedom of wanting to know information, a freedom of wanting new things, a freedom of knowing things from what's really going on for the collective on a personal level, because of this, we're finding that new groups are forming. So again, it ties up to the group mentality, to the collective, stemming from our personal self. Where are we fitting into this bigger picture of censorship versus freedom? The workplace has been a very obvious change that we've all gone through. We've each had to adapt in our work. It doesn't matter what type of work you do, I'm sure you've had to adapt in some way or another. And we're finding that the way we're adapting to work, and also the schooling, so if you think about colleges and schools and offices and the workplaces that we work in, a lot of it had to do with technology. Have you noticed how everything had to shift in technology? And also, a lot of it started to be more remote. So not face to face, but actually using technology and having more freedom to work where we want to. So whether it's at home, or some people actually decided to move out the cities and work somewhere completely far away from their usual workplace. We're having more freedom in that way. And technology is one of those things that are helping us become more free. Obviously, not all work can be done remotely or through distance, but it's giving us an insight into how society has to adapt in this new era. The things that can be automated, the things that can be done through technology, the things that can be done in these forms, in these new forms and these new formats or these new online communities, will start to bring a change in the workplace and in the schooling and the education system and even the healthcare system. We're seeing how more people are talking to their doctors through an app. We're seeing how school kids and universities and colleges are all starting to do things more online. So all of these things are tools that are starting to come into place. And it's quite interesting for me on a personal level, because I remember 12 years ago, I still know a lot of people who started back then doing digital nomad life. And back then it was still a very weird and alternative way of working through your laptop and traveling and being location independent. And I remember a lot of people saying that's just not reality. Fast forward to 2020 and beyond, and we're going to start seeing more of that. We're going to start seeing how we have to adapt to these things on a practical level. And in terms of finding careers, we also have to make new choices in how we bring our work forward in the world. So if you are working, how can you adapt to this? As, for example, as a therapist and as a yoga teacher, I noticed our whole community went online. There's more classes online. There's more therapy sessions online. It's just been amazing to see, because it's been on my mind for so long, but it took 2020 to actually push me on a personal level to go more online. So that's something I'm sharing, and I'm sure you can think about some examples in your life where this year has made you adapt and shift and push yourself to do something, maybe something totally different than what you're used to. And more as we go into this century ahead, we're going to start seeing how these jobs and our education system is going to be changing because of this. And one interesting thing that I notice is the acts of service is also becoming very clear. To have a service focused career, a service focused even technology based, like an app or website, is something that I'm seeing a lot of people have benefited from. Those who maybe had it before and then are starting to use more of it are starting to see that a lot of services can be done online. So whatever it is that you feel is an act of service in your life, the things that you want to offer, I highly recommend maybe exploring it. And also, if you've ever been thinking about creating your own business online, now is absolutely the time to do this, because the energy is there and people are more open to it. I always say these cycles are there for a reason, because there's a shift in mentality and the way we approach things. If you're ever thinking about passive income, that's another thing online. I notice a lot of people have made a lot more money this year because everything has been online, through services, through selling, through digital products, through passive income. So just some food for thought if anyone's out there thinking about this. And for the children out there, I think in future, this is something that they're also going to be seeing more and more. Before, the old educational system, and even to this day, it still needs an update to be more connected to technology, to empower children and young people to start their own businesses, so that if something were to go wrong in their career path, they have something as a backup. This is something I've seen a lot of parents starting to do, starting to teach their children how to create their own businesses, even from the teenage years. I mean, the teenagers nowadays are so tech savvy. They know exactly what's going on, even more than their parents. So it's amazing to see this transformation where actually the younger people are teaching the elders how to work with this new energy and this new technology. So again, more food for thought. If you do have children, and if they do enjoy technology, finding balance and positive ways of using technology is an amazing tool. Okay, so as we move on, we can also start to talk about the earth. We can start to talk about nature and how it's adapting. Mother Nature is always constantly adapting. It's always been there. She's always gone through so many different cycles. She's seen it all. So this is nothing new to Mother Earth. But as we go through the Aquarian age, I feel like we will start to honor her presence and her gifts on a much more deeper level, especially the cycle that we're in. We are in Uranus in Taurus cycle for the next 7 years, I think it is. And Uranus is the planet of Aquarius. You know, it's the home planet of Aquarius. And Taurus is about earth and nature and being more slow and connecting to the gifts and the beautiful Mama Earth wisdom. So we're going to be seeing more impact, and maybe even the collective impact of connecting to the earth. I mean, there's so many groups already who have bigger voices now, that you can see, that are talking about the earth, that are talking about nature, that are speaking up about the changes that we need to do. And I think especially with the younger generation, it's going to be normal to be able to talk about these things without feeling like you're strange or you're odd or you're different or you're rebellious. It's actually just going to be a normal part. Earth has a way of grounding us. And as we went through 2020, many people have started to move away from the towns and cities and started to live in rural country areas. And this is such an amazing shift because it's almost reversing the trend that's been going on for hundreds of years. For many, many years, people from villages would go to the city to find work, and they would most often stay in the cities. I mean, I can talk from the perspective of the UK and also the Mediterranean in Spain. A lot of these villages, especially where I am now in Spain, they're empty. They're absolutely empty. And now that the people are starting to realize that they can remotely work and they can start being location independent and choosing to get out of the cities so that they have more room to be with nature, a lot of these small towns are starting to realize that they have to step up and start creating spaces for the people that are actually from the city. So there's so many shifts that are going on with the country life versus the city life. And each one of us will also know whether we feel more comfortable in the city or in the country, especially after the year we've had with the lockdowns and with evaluating the space and the resources that we have near us. So take a moment to think for yourself, reflect whether you feel any shifts within yourself. If you are in a city, do you feel the call to now be more in nature or to create more nature within your home even? And if you are in the countryside, do you feel like you value more of the earth, or do you feel like there's still more opportunities, or there's opportunities in the city? People's ideas are shifting about the places that we live in and also how we live. We no longer want to be tied down to a very crowded city life. Some people still love it like I do, But I also know there has to be a balance, because as we move into the Aquarian age, the cities are going to get much more either empty or much more crowded. Crowded in a sense that the energy is going to be much more crowded, not necessarily the amount of people. So this was very interesting to see in 2020. And another thing that I'm definitely looking forward to in the next coming years, and it's already started, is seeing how science and the so-called alternative health will come more together. Aquarian energy loves science, it loves technology, it loves science, it loves the logical side of things. And over the last 10 years or the last 15 years, science has really stepped up in terms of providing the things and the information and evidence about things that we already knew about, about alternative health, about healing, as well as connecting with the earth. There's going to be more of a focus on the healing aspect, on the energy aspect. So if you are an energy healer, just know that this is a very beautiful time to be an energy healer and to share your gifts. If you are doing a service related to helping other people as well, that's energy in itself. That's going to be very much needed in the future, because it's energy exchange, and people value energy, and people want to be more connected and in tune with their own energy and being able to share their energy. And a lot of these different quote-unquote alternative therapies are going to become even more normal. As a therapist and yoga teacher myself, I remember back in 2012 where there was a big shift going on, and there was so much talk about the end of the world. It was hyped up in different ways, and some ways that I don't agree with as well. And then when it happened to seem like another year, just another year that passed by, even though the shifts happened, a lot of things were going on underneath the surface. And I was meeting so many people back then in the early 2010s who were just starting their journey. And because of the global crisis that we went through 2007 to 2008, that had an impact throughout the early 2010s. A lot of people now are actually much more into the therapies and the healing and sharing their gifts with the world. So it took the last 7 years, the last 10 years even, and the last 12 years, all the different cycles that have happened in astrology, it's taken that for the people who are doing the things now, sharing the gifts now, to really step up. And it's so exciting to see that. It's so exciting to also know that the people now who are going through shifts are going to be the next leaders and the next people pushing the healing and the service and the acts of love in the world in many different forms, not just in therapy work and in yoga, but in many different forms. And Aquarian energy really supports that, because it is collectively part of being in purpose. It's about being in purpose for humankind. So I always say, if we are looking to adapt into this age, it's about going back to our purpose. What's our purpose? What do we feel is our true calling? And taking those first steps, especially after the year we've been through, and the next couple of years as we go through different political and structural transitions. It's going to be something to reflect on. What is our true purpose? What is our dharma? How can we be of service to the world on a personal level, on a collective level? And how can we actually make this part of who we are, through our job, through our career, through the things we teach our family and our friends and everyone around us, so it becomes all integrated into one. So there's some amazing times ahead, and I'm looking forward to it. It is a slow process, as with any transition, especially on a global level. We will feel the impact on a personal level as well. We'll have to go through the triggers, we'll have to go through the shadow, we'll have to go through some of the more difficult, challenging things that we're all asking ourselves, and 2020 has definitely been doing that for me and many of you listening. But it's all for a greater cause, I think. All the things that are coming up now in time, even in the future when we talk about the generations ahead of us, all of this is creating a beautiful foundation for change. And this is something to look forward to. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this long workshop. I know there's a lot of information here, so what I've done is in the blog post I have specific timestamps, links where you can jump straight into specific sections, and you can take your time with each section if you want to return back to them. And of course, I always welcome feedback, so you can email me and let me know how you were feeling about the workshop, whether there were things that you wanted to know more of, or if you felt that it helped you in any way. I'm always here to listen to both the good and the bad. I love all feedback. It helps me expand and grow as well. And you can do that by emailing me at yogaforempaths@gmail.com, yogaforempaths@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to listen to your feedback. So thanks again for this beautiful workshop and connecting, and I wish you a beautiful day. Sat Nam.